of this government, improvement in the health of the state also overhang. Now, as a lot has been done in terms of policy initiatives like Samadhan, Shakti, Parivartan to manage the banking stress, but hardly any progress has been made, and a lot of these projects continue to be stranded. As a result, the stocks also haven't generated much wealth. You can see on your screen, while the Nifty returned at an annual rate of around 12%, the power sector did not perform much. Back to you.
Let's now invite our guests, Anil Swarup, former Secretary of the Coal Ministry, Harry Dhol, Director General of the Independent Power Producers Association of India, and Dr. Pramod Dev, former Chairman of the CERC, the Central Electricity Regulator. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Mr. Swarup, if I may start with you, the promise of power for all substantially fulfilled. Power availability has been extended to practically all the villages in the country, and yet we see this peculiar phenomenon of growth of power consumption rising by the lowest in the last many years, just 4% in the year that has just ended. How do you explain this quandary?
See, the government needs to be complimented in reaching out to the lowest level. I think Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Yojana was a massive success. So I think the potential has been created to deliver power to everyone in the country, and that's a remarkable achievement. But the problem fundamentally is with the DISCOMs. That's where most of the consumption of power is. If the health of DISCOMs does not improve, and as it is not, I think we are in serious trouble, because it has a spiraling effect. So if the DISCOMs don't do well and they are not economically viable or financially sound, then it leads to serious problems. They don't pay up the power gencos don't pay up the Coal India, and so on and so forth, and the assets will continue to be a serious problem, the power assets. So the fundamental address should have been through the Uday scheme, which started off so well, which started off very promisingly, creating a lot of fiscal space for the DISCOMs to do well. But unfortunately, what happened in Gujarat could not be replicated elsewhere in the country. There was a model available in the country that should have been, could have been replicated, but unfortunately it wasn't. So DISCOMs are in real trouble. So irrespective of the fact whether you are creating that ability to deliver power at the lowest level, if you don't have power and the DISCOMs are not capable of buying more power, how are they going to deliver it? And this actually results in a lower consumption of power. As you say, the growth is only 4%. It also reflects perhaps the manufacturing sector, but even otherwise, I think DISCOMs are not in a position to buy more power.
Yes, Mr. Swarup, actually, let me take that question straight away to Mr. Pramod Dev, who has seen many of these cycles. Actually, I have seen so many of these cycles. As a cub reporter in 2003, we reported the same thing, DISCOMs not able to pay. And then, actually, some of their loans also got transferred to the state government. At that time, there was a demand that they become SLR also, those bonds. And then again in 2013, we went through the same thing. And then we go through in 2016 with Uday. Mr. Dev, I mean, this is a law and order problem. AT&C losses have come down by all of 2 percentage points in 5 years. Uday had promised that AT&C losses will come down to 15%. They still stand at 19%. It's a simple law and order problem, isn't it? Why is it so difficult to tackle at the state level?
Well, having worked as a regulator, both at the state and center, I can say that electricity for all practical purposes is a state subject. After all, the state government had to finally face the election, and also they had to look after their political interests. And the problem comes is they have been doing charity at the cost of the DISCOM. So what they have been doing is that they are asking DISCOM not to raise tariffs, not to raise the rates, and continue to supply electricity. Now the DISCOM face a problem because they can't borrow, because their borrowing capacity is very low now. Now, that's why the Uday was a very welcome thing, where it put the responsibility on the states. It asked the states to take over their debts. But after that, again, the same situation cycle has started recurring. And that's why we are facing this issue. Though you might have taken electricity to every village or even almost every willing household. But the problem is, for the DISCOM, if they buy electricity to supply to these remote areas, they are not the paying customer. Whereas the paying customers are your industrial and commercial consumers. So what they want to do is they want to supply to the revenue earning customer and then starve the others. So this is the problem which is basically built in the whole system.
Mr. Dhol, what are the 2 or 3 things that the new government needs to do in order to address these very challenges? You know, mounting receivables, inadequate hikes in power tariffs, late subsidy disbursals, all of which is resulting in the problems at the DISCOM's end. What do you think the 2 or 3 things are that the new government needs to do immediately?
Well, the first thing that the government needs to look at is to make up its mind that the power sector has 2 pieces to it. One is the competitively bid, market-oriented, consumer-friendly sector, and the other is the cost-plus sector. If you look very carefully, you'll find that DISCOMs come under the second category. There's a cost-plus. There is no incentive or handle to bring in competition or efficiency. Therefore, there is nothing happening in terms of improving service or improving consumer prices. As the earlier speakers mentioned, you have to end up paying a lot of money just to subsidize the losses of the DISCOMs. The other point, which was very important, was the fact you can't meter most of the power that is flowing out into the rural areas. So therefore, quality of service, type of power available, etc. is a disaster in terms of the fact that you are not able to meter. Now that's all got to do with the political discourse, as Dr. Dev mentioned. So first is, make up your mind whether you want to create competition and bring in efficiency. I think the first thing the government needs to do is to bring in content and carriage in the distribution sector so that there is efficiency and the consumer gets a lower price. The second thing I think that needs to be done is, we have a serious issue with coal supplies. Coal India, for example, in some cases has signed a contract, say for 100 tons, for example, supplies 60, sells the balance in the open market at a higher price, and then the generator has to pay a penalty for not being able to supply at least 85% of the power. So there are a lot of nitty-gritties that are there which can be ironed out very quickly once we have clarity of thought that we want to benefit the consumer. The entire dialogue and discourse in the power sector, unfortunately, for the last 25 years, has been either the generator or the transmitter or the distribution. It's not so. It's the consumer. You have to understand the consumer have to have the ability to pay. The rural stress that we are going through, for example, is pathetic. I'm told that the kind of load shedding that's going on is in the realm of 60% in some of the states. So these are all facts that need to be sorted out. But the macro issue is to decide whether the country needs to have a competitive power sector which is efficient, or whether you're going to hang on to the old legacy of cost plus, which is what has been going on since 1948, be it generators, be it transmission, be it distribution.
Mr. Swaroop, if you have to evaluate the government's performance, you gave them an A+ for the availability of electricity, making electricity available to every village. How would you rate their performance in terms of DISCOMs? I mean, after all, although Uday was announced by the central government, for the better part, for 3 out of the 5 years, 57% of India was ruled by BJP governments at the state level. A few of them were ruled by BJP allies. How do you explain then this performance of DISCOMs? Why was there not some cooperative federalism in this issue?
You know, as far as DISCOMs are concerned, I think the performance has been abysmal. It should have been much better, because there was indeed an example where it has happened. That is the state of Gujarat. What was really required to be done is to sit down and understand how did it happen in Gujarat. We've been discussing a lot of prescription about how to go about setting the power sector right. I think each one of us know what needs to be done. The question is to make it happen on the ground. The good news was that it had happened on the ground in the state of Gujarat. The tragedy was that perhaps we did not intensively engage with that state to understand how it happened and to make it happen elsewhere. In fact, as Coal Secretary had clearly suggested that there should be teams from, say, Rajasthan, which is an adjoining state, should visit Gujarat, understand from them, sit down and work out a detailed action plan with regard to how it has to be done, who will do it, by when it will be done, and fix responsibility. Unfortunately, the intensity with which Uday ought to have been implemented was not implemented, and that is the reason why we have trouble today. So had they gone about doing it in the manner in which Gujarat had done it, probably both Rajasthan, MP would have benefited. Similarly, Chhattisgarh had done much better than other states. States like Jharkhand could have benefited from Chhattisgarh. States like MP could have benefited. So we didn't really require rocket technology to turn around the power sector. The intention was there, the policy was there, the initiative was there, but perhaps the engagement that should have happened, the intensity of engagement was missing, and that's why, whereas on the one hand, we created a potential of delivering power to every household, we did not have power to deliver it there, and that's where the role of DISCOMs is very important. We can continue to discuss with regard to what needs to be done. I think that's known, the prescription is there. What is required is a sincere application on the ground, and we don't have to go elsewhere to learn how it needs to be done. It has been done, and it could have been done. Unfortunately, it was not done.
Okay. Mr. Daul, if you had to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 the Uday scheme, what would your rating be? And any more numbers with respect to, at the end of this government's tenure, which are the states that have the maximum power losses now? Which are the DISCOMs which are sitting at the highest amount of payables?
I'm sorry, I don't have the latest numbers on the DISCOM losses, but I would like to react to what Mr. Swaroop said, and that is that there is also the Gujarat model is a great point, but the Gujarat model also has some cost plus on transmission. It's facing a lot of problems on the way the competitive part has been dealt with. So if you ask me to rate the performance, I would say that this particular government started off on the wrong foot because they had a residual problem from the previous government, which is the 2006 national tariff policy. So, and the first thing that happened was the coal blocks, the coal mines that were running were absolutely sort of knocked off thanks to the fact that the Supreme Court took a decision based on the advice of the then Attorney General, who clearly said that we have no objection if all these coal blocks are stopped. So we started off on the wrong foot, thanks to wrong advice and a problem which was not the creation of the BJP government. It was something which was going on from before. I would say that they tried very hard to recover and bring in a lot of schemes, and there's been a lot of dynamism. And so I would say that for effort, the government, I would give it 7 out of 10.
Mr. Deo, what would your rating be? What rating would you give the government for its performance in the power sector?
You see, if you ask me in the power sector, as far as central government is concerned, I would give them 8 out of 10. So whatever they have done, the schemes have been improved. If you were to take the Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Yojana, it's certainly an improvement. Earlier, the assumption was that once you take electricity to villages, you will be supplying only for lighting. So the capacity of the transformers which was supplied was very low. So, and it was expected that the state government and the DISCOM will upgrade those transformers, which was not a reality. Now, having realized this Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Yojana has improved upon it. So that's such a positive thing. But the question remains, as you said, that nearly 57% of the states were under BJP. But it makes no difference whether BJP is in power or somebody else is in power. Now, Harry Dhawan has been talking about the market. But if you are talking of the market in the electricity sector, you can't have a market only at the top. You have to also go down to the supply, that is the fuel. And if you are talking of fuel, there is no appetite, because now the new act under the coal thing, you could have gone for privatization, but there is no appetite for that. That is something which next government has to do. But again, coming back to the DISCOM, it is the issue which has to be politically addressed, because the question comes is, this money has to come from state budget, not from the DISCOM's budget. DISCOMs have to be run on a commercial basis. And if you can do that, then obviously the market will develop. Otherwise, you'll have all these distortions.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. That's an 8 and a 7 out of 10 that these gentlemen have given. But as Anisha pointed out, there's about 2 lakh crore of power assets that are waiting to go into the NCLT. Power theft, which was supposed to come down, or AT&C losses, which were supposed to come down from 21 to 15%, have come down to only 19%. So that's still a lot of losses. Let's see what the voters make of the power sector. And now on to our new series, Election and Markets, in which we analyse how past elections and successive governments have dealt with various issues around key sectors. Today we look at the roads sector, its performance over the last 5 years of the BJP government and the big issues that it has left on the plate for the next government. Let me first hand it over to Anisha for a check on how the numbers stack up.
Well, let me start by talking about the thing that matters the most to investors. That is the stock performance. As you can see, the underperformance of the sector in the 2009 to 2014 region has been reversed in the last 5 years, with names like NCC growing at a scorching rate of 39% a year. And this does exemplify the performance of construction sector over the last 5 years. Now, the budgetary outlay for roads increased at an annual rate of 21% during FY15 to 19 and trebled from almost $6.6 billion in FY15 to around $17 billion in FY17. Now, this increased outlay led to the success in EPC awards in the initial 2 to 3 years, and that really allowed the construction companies to strengthen their beleaguered balance sheets and later participate in the PPP models like hybrid annuity, etc. Now, the highway construction also increased at an annual rate of 23% between FY14 to 18, and that set the stage for the government to set an ambitious target of construction of around 10,000 kilometers of national highways in FY19. In fact, the length of national highways constructed reached around 6,700 kilometers between the first 9 months of this year itself. Now, the pace of highway construction too accelerated from 12 kilometers per day in FY14 to right to 27 kilometers per day that we have seen in FY18 and 19, though it is still much below the government's own target of 40 kilometers a day. However, having said that, what this government did a commendable job with is the acceleration in the pace of roads awards. For example, by in FY14, less than 1,500 kilometers were awarded. In FY18, that number reached a level of around 7,500. The government over the last 5 years announced a lot of policy initiatives like Bharatmala, Sagarmala, etc. to support the road construction. The progress on the same, however, has been a tad bit slow compared to the tall targets. Now, Bharatmala 1, for example, the flagship policy of this government for road sector, entailed a spend of around 5.35 lakh on 34,800 kilometers of roads over the 5 years. However, as of September 18, only 270 kilometers were awarded versus the ask rate of 8,100 kilometers in FY19. So overall, while the government focus on infrastructure improvement was very evident in the first 3 to 4 years with nimble policy changes, easier arbitration, etc., issues like land acquisitions, delay in appointment dates, as well as the overall lack of funding really limited the performance in FY19, and the pace of awards has slowed down. That is the reason they had to scale down the initial guidance as well. Going forward, for any meaningful leg up in the sector, the companies would not only need the support from the central and the state governments, but it is also pertinent that the confidence of the banking sector comes back, because that has been one of the issues as well. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Anisha, for that very neat summary. Rohan Suryavanshi of Dilip Buildcon, Jayesh Desai, the infrastructure expert, and Praveen Sood, former Group CFO at HCC with us. Jayesh, let me begin with you. Anisha's data indicated that pace picked up brilliantly for the road orders and execution through the first 3, even 4 years, but the 5th year has been dull. You agree?
I think it has been dull. 2017-18 was in many ways a stellar year. You got a lot of hybrid annuity projects, 100 plus hybrid annuity projects awarded in that 15-month period. And it is clear that 2018-19 has been a dull year. I think largely, this actually keeps happening every time. Every 3-4 years, there's a big burst because project preparation has been done, and then it slows down. So we keep having this burst every 3-4 years. 2010 was a big burst here, then it slowed down for the next 4-5 years. Same thing happens again here. We had a lot of prepared projects. So it's a question of having a shelf of prepared projects rather than, anything. It's just a regular burst that happens.
Okay, let me invite Praveen Sood as well, the former Group CFO at HCC, who joins in. The 3 reasons why there's been a slowdown in, order awarding. One of them is land acquisition issues, delay in appointment dates, and the biggest one, I guess, is funding of projects, which we've seen only in the recent past. Have you seen any improvement in any of these 3 hurdles? And what is your own outlook on how things may progress over the next, say, 6 to 12 months?
Okay, fine. Let me start with the last one. I think funding issues, which was basically, I think keeping the pace at a very low rate, because most of the project which got awarded was unable to achieve financial closures, and of course banking sector will have their own problems, and they were not funding and not keen to funding the infra projects. But now things are changing. If you look at the last data of the last maybe say 4 or 5 months, you will find there is basically a credit given to this sector has improved drastically. In fact, almost 10% increase in being seen in the last 4 months if you look at. So I think now bankers are coming back because they have got their issues sorted out to a large extent. Some merger happened, some funding from government has happened. So basically, if you look at most of the financial woes of the construction sector are now getting over. It's improving, but I think still a far way to go. But they are showing a definite improvement. And then coming back to the earlier two issues, there is a major issue regarding this appointed date basically, because what is happening is that land acquisition continues to be a big problem, and being in the election year, I think you can't go wholehearted and then grab the land or maybe take the land as and when you want. I think this issue is also having problem, and some regulatory issue regarding forest clearances, approvals and all those things are basically slowing down the pace. But having said that, I think there has been a commendable improvement into the road sector in the last 4 years. If you look at the total projects under implementation, large projects under implementation in the entire sector, out of 1,300 large projects under implementation, 543 are mainly of the road sector. And they have basically shown a very little cost overrun or the time overrun. So that's good.
What about the highway construction order target that the government set out? Anisha was telling us how it has been scaled down by almost 40% from the earlier target. What do you see as the outlook?
So yes, the target obviously had been scaled down, and the primary reason for that was because of elections. We had a big year the year before that, so obviously there was a lack of DPRs which the government took time to prepare. Then also there had been changes in the NHI and MORTH which further sort of there were people who had moved out, new people who were coming in, so there was a time lag there as well. And also now because of the election year, you also had less time to award. Even if you look at the last financial year, most of the orders came in the last 1 month. Now we went into election code of conduct in the first week of March.
No, second
as in around 10th of March. So we didn't really have...
Election dates were announced on 11th. Code of conduct came after, mid-March.
Yeah, but we didn't have that full time for all the awarding that need to happen. So that was also a concern. But as we sit here, almost over 1 lakh crore of projects bids have already been floated. Now, these projects are where the land acquisition process has already started. The government is in, machinery is in place. So once the elections are over, whatever government comes in, whether it's, the current government...
You expect a burst of orders?
Yes, I do. Because, once the projects have been bidded out, as in they've been floated, cost has been incurred on the land acquisition. There is no other way than to give out these projects.
Mr. Sood, last 30 seconds, what's left on the plate? What would you be happy or warn about?
No, I'm happy, and I think what Rohan said and all those things, I also agree that I think most of the company into this sector will pose a growth of 20% average. I think the CRISIL report also came on this matter, says that it is looks like that 20% growth is given for this sector and all those things. So otherwise, I think things are improving for this sector, and I think things are looking much better as compared to what we have seen about 3 or 4 years back.
All right. Praveen Sood, Jayesh Desai and Rohan, thank you very much for joining in this conversation. It's a thumbs up for the road sector from our expert team, though they still believe that there are problems left on the table in terms of giving private equity investors the confidence to invest in new projects.